While replacing shifter bushings last week, I broke this vehicle. I lost every single gear, and this week we're going to diagnose what happened, why it happened, and fix it so that I can drive this car home. This car missed its first snow, and honestly, I'm a little sad I didn't get to go do donuts. It may look like a nice day outside, but it's actually around 30 degrees when I'm filming this. The first thing we need to do is figure out what actually went wrong. Why did that shifter end link break? I have a few general ideas of what could have caused it. I want to remove the intake to make sure I can actually test these and see which one's the real culprit.
Something's not adding up. Generally, the shift linkage should not have nearly that much stress on it, enough to snap plastic. Even if it's cold, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm gonna do a little bit of diagnosis and see kind of what I think it would be. Hopefully we can figure it out.
The first problem I'm noticing is that I can't rotate the gear selector. This is usually the job of the end link that broke, and I can see why, because there is a ton of pressure that really shouldn't be there. If you remember from the short shifter install, it took hardly any pressure to get this to move into gear, but now I can barely move it when I force it. This makes me think that the new bushing that we put in, the super slider, is just too tight. To test this hypothesis, I'm going to remove it and see if that makes it any better to get in and out of gear. This is a Diesel Geek super slider, and it's designed to fit perfectly with the stock setup for the car. I, however, don't have the stock setup. I have a short shifter by CTS Turbo, and what that means is they already eliminate some of the slop. So that, in combination with this upgraded bushing, may just result in a system that's too tight.
Okay. Instantly, I have a very good idea that this was the right problem. Before I took this off, we were having trouble rotating this into gear. So it should be able to do this pretty easily. And this is how it locks into and engages in the gear. Before that, I was putting a ton of pressure on it and it wasn't even budging. Like I couldn't get it into gear. I had no feel if there was any activation at all. So I was honestly pretty worried the last 3 nights that I had absolutely just ruined my transmission. So I'm glad to know that that's not the case.
Thankfully, I kept the stock part to put on just to test my hypothesis fully. The new bushing needed way more force than the cold plastic was able to handle, and it broke the old end link. Now that we know what caused the old end link to break, I feel comfortable installing the new part. Thankfully, this part got here a lot faster than I thought it would considering it was Thanksgiving week. This is a cable shifter end link. The hole on the right connects directly to the short shifter we had installed. On the left, you'll notice 3 prongs. All 3 prongs are necessary in order to grip the cable that connects to the front to back movement of the shifter. I'll pull the old one out and show you side by side why we actually needed to replace it and couldn't get by with using the old one.
Here's the old one, and the difference is this one lost a prong, which broke off. It won't actually be able to grab onto the shifter cable. So we're gonna just throw the new one in, throw this one out, and we'll be good to go.
To open the end link, you compress the spring and you rotate the end. This locks it in place so you can put the new cable in. Since this broke, the transmission and the shifter aren't aligned, which is the reason that we didn't have any gears. Aligning your shifter and your transmission sounds like a really daunting task, but it's honestly really straightforward once you know the steps, and I'll go ahead and show you the process. The same process can be followed for any Mark IV Volkswagen manual transmission. The first step is to open both shifter cable end links by compressing the spring and rotating the plastic. The next step sounds daunting, but it's actually pretty simple. On each transmission, there's going to be something called a locking pin. What this does is put the transmission in a homing position so that you can align the shifter. It's designed specifically for this. On my transmission, it's a specific pin that I can push in while I'm pushing the short shifter down in neutral. It's going to look like this lever right here if you have a 5-speed. Other than it being a tight fit, this step is pretty simple. Once it's locked, you'll notice you can't rotate it sideways or up and down. Don't try to force it because you can actually snap this pin inside the transmission, and that's a whole other can of worms. Next, it's time to use a 5mm pin to put the shifter in the home position. Simply line up both of the holes and put the shifter in. The higher the tolerance, the better the alignment. For the next step, pull all the slack out of the end links and the cable and release them so that they grip onto the cable itself. Next, you can unlock the transmission itself. Next, hop into the car and remove the homing pin on the stick shift itself. After this, you're good to push in the clutch and go through all your gears to make sure that they all engage correctly.
Dude, I can't even begin to explain how happy I am. I have gears again. I have all 6, 7 if you count reverse. I was literally up for like 2 nights straight because I was worried I was gonna have to either find another car or replace the transmission. So I'm glad we figured that out.
While I have the car undressed this far, I want to see if my front to back or side to side cable end bushings are out. To test this, you can simply lock the transmission and go inside and wiggle the stick shift. If there's a ton of slop, then you need to replace them, but I really didn't have much, so I think they're good to go. We are finally able to start putting the car back together and going for a drive. I am ecstatic at this point. The intake's the first thing to go on, and like always, it is a very simple job. If you're like me and your daily driver happens to be your project car, and there are times when you can't drive it, you'll really appreciate it more than anything when you finally get it back. Compared to driving a lifted beater truck, this car is so much fun. First thing on the interior is to reinstall the bracket that holds the stick shift onto the chassis. Next, we're going to add this part that I like to call the shifting mound onto the car. All this does is add support underneath the center console and add somewhere for the aluminum to bolt onto. I decided to deep clean and refinish the center console since it was off and easy to get to. It takes a bit of finagling, but once you get the center console in, it snaps into place with a very satisfying click.
There we go.
There are several buttons and wires underneath the center console, and you just gotta be careful, but they're all in pretty logical places. Now, all that's left is to pretty up the aluminum pieces, and we're good to go. For the final trim piece, I used a little bit of tape to stop the light from depressing as I clicked the piece in. The car is now running and shifting better than ever. It's unreal the amount of support this series has been getting, and I really hope you're enjoying these build videos. I'm enjoying making these, and I'm really enjoying talking to you guys about them. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe. I've got a lot of fun videos and parts on the way. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful day.